Greg Pereira and I'm a toy collector from Perth, Western Australia. Behind me is some of my collection. I come from a long line of collectors, and over the years I've thought about collecting and why do we do it? What does it mean to be a collector? What compels us to collect? Does collecting stem from childhood? Are collectors a certain type of person? Is collecting an obsession? And most important, does collecting really make you happy? By the time I had gone to high school, like most people, I thought it's time to grow up and sell off my toys and childish things. So I ended up selling them off at garage sales and toy fairs and swap meets. Like most adult collectors though, I really regret it.
Nobody does Star Wars like the power of the Force from Canada.
In 1995, after a long period of time with no Star Wars merchandise, the Kenner Toy Company decided to release the new Star Wars figures. I could hardly contain my joy and excitement. So my friend Andrew and I started collecting Star Wars figures and spaceships again, both new and vintage ones. Since then, I've branched out to collect Marvel and DC figures, Indiana Jones toys, horror movie figures and statues, die-cast movie cars and more. Collecting helped me connect to my most favourite period in my life, my childhood, especially from the 70s and 80s. I basically fell in love with these characters again. They were like long-lost family members from my childhood that I'd forgotten about. In 1992, I was a seller at Perth's very first toy fair called the Nexus Fair, held in Victoria Park. 24 years later, I still sell and attend Perth's oldest toy fair. Nexus allowed me to make friends and meet like-minded collectors. Oh yeah, and let's not forget the most important thing for a collector is getting into the fair early and scouring around for a great bargain to add to your collection. I asked Mike Kouwen, manager of the Nexus Fair, why are toy fairs so successful?
I think it's obviously because it fills a gap in what consumers want. Whereas back in the day, people used to collect trading cards and things more of that nature. Now it's become very much a TV culture or a movie culture is almost driving a lot of these things. The children drive it as much, I think, as the parents. But there are a lot of older people who still collect. You know, people are just coming along for entertainment. It's just grown tremendously over the last couple of years. I've never really thought to analyse why it's so popular. I'm just happy that it is. I personally collect things that I like to think have a sense of completeness. But then again, I've also got some collections where there is no end. You've got an idea of how big it is, but you don't know all the exact components. I keep an eye out for things, I chase certain things. I spend quite a lot of time on it, possibly a lot of my free time, which could be spent elsewhere, but you've got to spend your recreational time somewhere. There are other people who, I don't know, they must just collect odd things. I think the definition of a collection is you've got three things that have got a common thread. Personally, I don't know. I think it's a healthy thing. Sometimes I think people maybe are a little bit into it too much, but as long as they're not doing any harm to their financial situation or to their relationships or whatever, and don't become too self-obsessed. There's an awful lot of collectors out there, so
That memento that helps us to connect further to the franchise that we know and love. And then from there, well, it just gets dangerous because we buy more and more.
I've always wondered if the collecting bug was something passed down to me from my parents. This is my mum, Faye Pereira, and my aunt, Beverly Nichols, who have been avid collectors of antiques since the 1970s.
We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz.
Yes, I do think collecting does start from childhood because I think most people remember all the presents they got for Christmas, especially girls with dolls, and everybody remembers all the toys they had and the teddies they had, and it's a very happy thing to remember your childhood and what you had. And then as you get older, you look back and think, oh, I had that doll when I was young, and I'd love to find that doll again, and a lot of people do. And also preserving beautiful things made years ago.
I think they're all different sorts of people. Some people collect china, some dolls, stamps, anything. And you get to meet them at different clubs and different collectible fairs, see what other people have, which is very interesting or can be very boring. You meet nice people and you do a lot of swaps. You meet people that've got exactly what you want and you try to talk them into selling it to you for years sometimes, and usually they do in the end.
The manufacture of the dolls was absolutely fantastic, and the people that painted the faces and repaired the dolls. There's a lot to do with dolls. Things go wrong, arms fall off, legs fall off, so you have to fix up a lot of things. And dressing them is great fun. I've had a lot of fun collecting. We've collected dolls from the 18th century right up till today. We have quite a big selection of dolls and teddies and Shirley Temple dolls, baby dolls, grown-up dolls, so it was a lot of fun.
And it's just so interesting and you can get caught up with it, and I think it's lovely for children. A lot of children come to the collectors fair and they get to learn about the old china and the dolls and the bears and whatever interests them. These days, unfortunately, a lot of young people are more interested in technical things, but you find treasures, you just never know what you're going to pick up here, there or everywhere. And it's good going to op shops because that's where you'll get some of the old clothes for the dolls, some of the old dolls. We've picked up a few really very good things at op shops over the year. And then again, we get very ordinary things too.
This one is the starting. That's the first doll we ever collected. Yeah, in the original clothes. Doll collecting is very interesting. The type of dolls and where they've come from. A lot are from Germany, a lot of them from France. All over the world, every country made dolls and toys, all the things that doll collectors love to collect. My mother loved china, so I always remember those sort of things too, and that's what we collect today. We collect lovely china, pretty china, crystal. I think that's come from my childhood too.
With eBay, you can buy things that you never see here. You've never seen them here and you never will. They come from England, America, Germany, wherever. And a lot of the dolls that we have are dolls we would never have if we hadn't got them on eBay.
Mum is also a member of the Doll Club of Perth, which celebrates the love and collecting of old antique dolls and reproductions, including everyone's favourite plastic bombshell.
Barbie, you're beautiful. You make me feel.
Launched by the Mattel Toy Company in 1959, the Barbie doll has been the biggest selling doll in toy history. Neil Taylor is a huge Barbie fan and has the biggest Barbie collection in Australia.
The thing I love about Barbie, first time I saw Barbie that I remember was my cousin's Barbies when I was 2 years old. Pretty much couldn't get me to put them down, but when I got my hands on them, I actually ended up having a bit of a tantrum until I got one when I was about 3.5, 4, which is this doll here, who I still have to this day. My dad wasn't too impressed, I must say. He was a truck driver farmer, but Barbie stayed and was joined by others, obviously, along the years. And I had Barbies as a kid probably until I was about 7-ish. Around that time, Dad went, no more Barbies, that's it. So I went to Ken. And after Ken, G.I. Joe and Big Jim and all the other action figures, I guess. I'd still buy the odd Barbie and sneak into the bottom of the wardrobe. The minute I left school, basically I started buying stuff at op shops when they were old Barbies. I just threw them in a suitcase, to be perfectly honest, because I thought they were kind of cool. And I can remember going to supermarkets probably 30 years ago. I don't know, it's a long time, put it that way. I'm not giving it away. Basically, went to supermarkets and I spotted a 1965 Ben Leg doll in the box. And the illustrations and the artwork on the packaging, this sucked me straight in. I was like, oh my God, I've got to have it. And it was $20, which at the time was stupid money for an old Barbie, when seriously, paid it. And I've got to admit that doll, which was quite rare and worth a fortune, not that I knew at the time, sat next to my oven on top of the cupboard in the kitchen for about 4 years, probably getting greasy and gross. Still have it though. Probably a year or so later, or that Christmas, I think one of my friends bought me a book as a joke. I think it was The Life and Times of Barbie or something like that. And I kind of got that for Christmas. Went through my suitcase and went, oh, hang on a minute, I've got a ton of this stuff that's quite rare, and I loved fashion. I was always involved with fashion anyway. When I got the book, I started putting things together, realised I had the making of quite a decent collection. So any Barbie stuff I could get my hands on. And it did get kind of out of hand for a while there. Actually, that's an understatement, it got crazy. Every penny was going on Barbie. The thing I love, I guess, is the fashion was really beautifully made. It was miniature of couture fashion, basically. The designer was Charlotte Johnson with Mattel from 1958, before Barbie was released. She did the outfits right up until 1972, roughly. Basically, she would go to the Paris shows, pretty much copy couture fashion, and it was made in miniature. Fully lined, hand-stitched hems, zippers sewn in by hand, buttons that work properly. Beautiful miniature fashion, basically. I guess that was the big thing that got me, and the accessories. All about the accessories. It can become obsessive. I will say I was addicted at one point. Every penny I had would go on Barbie stuff. It's all I thought about. I had to have it regardless of whether my bills were paid. You know, much to the detriment of my finances, I must say. It was bad. It's a long time ago. I outgrew that phase a very long time ago, I've got to say. As far as being an addiction, hell yes, of course it is. I can't ever imagine not having at least a couple of these dolls around me. There's always something to learn, because there's foreign market items that you never see, or variations of something, or something that you're always hunting for that's rare, the holy grail. It's pretty addictive, I've got to say, and there's so much of the damn stuff. Not only Barbie, you've got Ken, Midge, Barbie's girlfriend, Alan, Ken's friend, Skipper and Scooter, which is Barbie's sister, younger sister and her friend, Ricky, who's another friend, Tootie and Todd, who I'm not into. Barbie's tiny twin brother and sister that remind me of Chucky from Child's Play, and even some of the scary, big puffy 80s stuff, shoulder pad. And that stuff, it's because it's so scary, it's kind of cool. But yeah, I don't know, I think it is an obsession still, but not an unhealthy one. I've got it under control.
Most of today's biggest blockbuster movies are from, you guessed it, comics. What comic fans have secretly known for years is that some of the best stories come from none other than comic books. Here is Brett Chilman, who once held the record for the biggest comic book collection in the world.
I think the thing that I like most about comic books is there's so many aspects to it. You've got the reading side, you've got the collecting side, you've got the artwork side, and now you've even got the movie side. So it has to appeal to someone. And then you've even got the older people like myself now, because they're older and they've got a little bit more money than what they did when they were 8, they're actually getting into the investment side. So there are people out there that are doing very well on the investing into comic books. Now I've got my detective comics here. I've got my Spider-Mans over there. I've got some Batmans here. So I've got all the big names, you know, the Punishers that everyone likes. The main reason I started getting into comic books when I was younger is I used to play basketball and we used to travel, and the coach would say, get yourself a hobby that you can do while you're traveling. And there's not many hobbies you can do while you're traveling. And luckily a friend of mine had a box of comic books and said, look, if you've got nothing to do you want to read these?
great. So
will
this
be.
is how many years of collecting?
Oh, this is 25 years of collecting.
Wow,
A long time.
25 years of collecting.
So I started reading them, and then all of a sudden in the issue it's got, please refer to this issue if you want to know more. So silly me went, well, I know nothing about it, I've just started collecting. So I had to go and buy those issues, and then you get into that character, and then other characters join the comic book, so then you want to know more about other characters, and then from there it just expands and expands. And then luckily, part of the deal was whenever I travelled, I was allowed to bring one box of comic books back, but it didn't say how big the box could be. So me being smart, got the biggest box I could possibly get and fill it. After 15 years of travelling, my nana had a room full of comic books in her house that I just stored, and she always keeps bragging about how she used to store my comic books in her house, in the room. And then when I did retire, I had the time to go through them all. And then from there, people were contacting me saying, do you have a spare copy of this? Do you want to swap? So from there, it just got so big that I decided I wanted to build a vault in my house to store them all in. And then when I had kids, of course, I named my kids after comic books. So I've got Tristan after Prince Tristan from Stardust. I've got Logan, which is the easy one, that's Wolverine. And then I've got Isabel, who's named after Tinkerbell, and Isabel after Beauty and the Beast.
Brett has some very rare comic books in his collection. He's even held his own comic book exhibition held at the Allenbrook Arts Centre, just east of Perth.
Oh, collecting always makes me happy. I think it's more of an OCD thing at the moment. You know, you have to just do it as part of your life. People actually refer to me as the comic guy now. So I've got comic guy plates. Even at work, people refer to me as the comic guy. My kids refer to me as the comic guy to their friends. So it's one of those things that I've just been associated with that. And I've been lucky enough to expand my collection and be so well known now that I've done my own galleries. I've helped the government try to set up comic book libraries and things like that. So I'm trying to show my passion to everyone else. So there has to be something there that someone appeals to in some way or another. It's just basically everything that I don't have, I buy. Oh, really super.
So, all this love of books, comics, movies, games, characters and stories all provide us with what the human heart needs: interaction and entertainment. I think as collectors, it just makes us happy to know that our collection is there with us anytime we need it. Someone once told me that they really love people that are passionate about what they like. Well, I love filmmaking. I love pop culture, I love movies, and yes, I love toys. Am I a bit crazy? Am I obsessed? Am I a geek or a nerd? I think probably all of the above. But you know what? I'm proud.